Snow claws at the world as if trying to tear it loose. The wind does not whistle. It screams, gathering speed as it rolls down the ridge and slams into Eliza's back. She leans into it, rope wrapped twice around her waist, the other end tied to the crooked pine that marks the hidden approach. The sled jerks behind her, skidding sideways, the sacks of beans and salt pork threatening to spill as the drifts deepen with every step. Her lantern swings, light trembling. She shields it with her hand. The flame shrinks, guttering, then steadies again. "Stay alive," she mutters. Then we argue about everything else. Her teeth ache from the cold. Snow sticks to her lashes. Beneath the surface, the ground vanishes without warning. A boot plunges into nothing. She twists, throws her weight back, and the rope bites into her waist hard enough to steal her breath. A hidden ravine. An inch farther and the storm would have eaten her like it already intends to eat the town. She pulls herself free. A sound rolls through the dark. Not thunder. Something long, heavy, shifting. The mountain reminding her it is listening. The cave mouth is only a shadow among shadows until she reaches the low shelf of rock and drops to her knees. The wind tries to wrench the sled away. She holds on, fingers burning, and scrapes snow from the narrow boards concealing the entrance. They creak as she pries them back. Cold air rushes inward like a thief slipping through a cracked door. Inside is black. She crawls first, dragging the sled behind, then pulls the boards back into place. Wind dulls. The cave breathes. She sets the lantern on a flat stone and strikes a match. The spark becomes light. The cabin appears slowly from darkness. Stove set deep into the rock. Shelves lined with jars. Barrels marked with neat handwriting. Mittens drying from pegs. A narrow bed made from planks and wool. There is order here. Thought. Weeks of labor and quiet defiance given shape. She removes her gloves, flexing numb fingers, and feeds a fistful of kindling into the stove. The match flares again. The first lick of fire takes, then grows. She waits, patient, adding wood in careful intervals. Too much heat now and the cave will sweat. Sweat becomes ice. She hangs the rope on its hook by the door, then opens her ledger and writes while her hand still shakes. December 21st, 1887. Storm arrived earlier than predicted. 2 days at least. Maybe more. Nobody will believe it until the wind starts stealing roofs. The words steady her. A memory intrudes uninvited. That morning in the square, the sky wearing a pale ring like a bruise. She had paused at the well, watching the halo around the sun, feeling the strange warm breath before the chill drop. The sheriff laughed when she warned him. "Every winter, Eliza, you can't fight the sky." She had not argued. She never does. The joke about the cave which rolled through the saloon as men slapped backs and played cards, and she only listened to the hollow sound of overconfidence. Back in the cave, she unlashed the sled, stacking supplies into their places. Dried beans here, pork salted and wrapped, candles. A tin of coffee she allows herself as a luxury. She checks the ventilation pipe, touches the wall where cloth and mud hold the heat. She moves through the small space the way a surgeon moves through an operating table. Precise, economical, quietly determined. Outside, the wind rises again. The cave entrance hums faintly. The storm wants in. She sits on the bed and pulls off her boots, turning them upside down near the stove. Steam drifts out, ghost-like. She rubs circulation back into her feet, jaw clenched, then listens. Not to silence. To the thousand small messages a storm sends if you know how to hear them. The pitch is changing. The air thickens. Snow piling, not drifting now. She imagines the town below. Lamps flickering, doors slamming. Someone insisting they will just ride it out. Furniture broken apart for fire. Windows stuffed with rags. A merchant who mocked her last summer counting crackers like coins. She lies back, not to sleep but to conserve. The ledger rests on her chest. The fire whispers. Somewhere, ice cracks. Somewhere farther away, an animal cries and then does not cry again. 5 days, she says softly. Maybe more. The storm presses harder, and the cave presses back. Heat shimmered off the dirt road the day the idea first rooted itself in her mind. June had baked the Montana hills into brittle crust, and Bitter Fork moved with the lazy confidence of people who believed tomorrow would match today. Miners stomped out of the shaft with blackened faces, joked about wages, spat into the dust. A preacher wiped his forehead and said the Lord would provide. The saloon doors slapped endlessly, like hands applauding their own denial. Eliza stood outside the general store, ledger open, pencil ticking against her lip. Nails, tar, cloth, flour, salt, oil. She wasn't buying in bulk yet. Not enough to alarm anyone, just enough to test the pattern. She looked past the rooftops, toward the ridge where caves notched the mountain like scars. The trapper found her there. Old man with a beard the wind had rearranged 100 times. He squinted at the sky the way some men squint at a lyre. Storm Road runs through that ridge, he said, nodding toward the caves. Wrong winter, wrong wind? Piles. Doesn't blow out. Stays. How long? She asked. He shrugged. Once, 5 days. Folks talked soft for a year after that. She thanked him, bought twice as much as she came for. By August, whispers followed her wagon like stray dogs. The first time someone said bunker, it had teeth of humor. By the third time, it grew fangs. Kids trailed behind her up the slope one afternoon, throwing pebbles and daring each other to touch the cave entrance. She ignored them, hammered a beam into rock, tested it again. Sweat ran down her back. Mosquitoes whined. Somewhere below, a piano played a jaunty tune that sounded like a dare. Sheriff Caldwell rode up once, hat pushed back, voice gentle because he liked her and didn't want to say the thing he had to say. People think you're stirring worry, talking too much about bad winters. Maybe keep it to yourself. I am keeping it to myself, she said, without looking up from the plank she was leveling. He shifted in his saddle. More than. The mine foreman came with jokes. If it freezes, we'll send for wood on the stagecoach. If the coach can't get through, we'll send men on horses. If the horses can't go, we'll burn dynamite. World always gives you something. Not always the right something, she said. He laughed like she'd said the funniest thing on earth, then went to the saloon to spread it around. She worked by lamp when nights cooled. She layered canvas, then mud, then cloth again along the walls. She sealed jugs. She stitched mittens and smoked meat and lined shelves with quiet patience. The cave took shape the way a plan becomes a habit. Slowly at first, then all at once. She built the stove throat into the stone and disguised the vent among rocks. She dug a little deeper, found where air traveled, marked it, respected it. One evening, she smashed her thumb with the hammer and sat there, sucking air through her teeth, angry enough to cry. Instead she laughed, a cracked, humorless sound. Fine, she told the cave. You get blood too. The ledger grew with notes. Temperature drops, cloud shapes, the way animals behaved before a storm. Not prophecy. Memory. Mockery thickened. Cave witch, the boys yelled. Women whispered that grief had frozen her. Men at the bar toasted to surviving anything with whiskey alone. She kept her back straight. Let them talk. Talk burned fast and produced little heat. On the final warm day of September, she stood at the cave entrance, hands on hips, and imagined it in winter. Snow choking the mouth, wind clawing, silence heavy as judgment. She pictured herself inside, counting, rationing, waiting. She didn't smile. She didn't dread. She simply accepted the bargain. Preparation now so survival later could be boring. At the church social, someone asked, loud enough for everyone, "So, Eliza, when the sky falls, do we all get invites to your royal cave?" Laughter rolled like a wave. She sipped coffee, looked at the cake table, and said mildly, "Everyone's invited to prepare on their own." The wave broke. Afterward, she hauled another load up the ridge, boots biting into dirt, breath steady. A storm would come one day without asking permission. Time would refuse to negotiate. When it did, she meant to meet it inside stone, not on her knees in the snow. By the third morning, the sky had vanished. There was only a white churn, as if the world had been turned inside out. Eliza woke to the sound of the stove breathing and the faint hiss of snow trying to join them. She rose, checked the vent, nudged the coals, added a careful slice of wood. The ledger waited on the table. She wrote with cramped fingers, Day 3. Town below will be learning now. She boiled a tin cup's worth of water, not more, and let the heat creep into her hands. Somewhere in the blizzard a board snapped. Somewhere else, a horse screamed the way only horses do when they understand too late that nature doesn't negotiate. By midday the first knock came. Not a polite rap, a frantic hammering. "Eliza! You in there?" She closed the ledger and stood very still. The voices bled through the cracks in the boards. The sheriff, breath ragged. A woman sobbing. The sharp whisper of children trying to be brave and failing at it. "Please," someone said. "It's only for the night." She unbarred the door halfway, letting in a blade of frozen air. The sheriff's mustache glittered with ice. The doctor's wife clutched a boy whose cheeks had gone numb and waxy. A miner leaned against the rock, hands wrapped in rags that were already crusted. "You warned us?" the sheriff said, shame riding shotgun on his voice. "We didn't listen." Eliza counted them, counted the barrels, counted the days left in her mind. "2 can come in," she said. 3 if the third can carry water without complaining. The miner lifted his ruined hands and tried a grin. "Guess I'm out." She studied him a beat longer, then nodded toward the boy. "Him. And you." Her gaze landed on the doctor's wife. "You know something about fevers. I need that more than I need apologies." They squeezed inside. The others turned back into the storm like ghosts. One of the men cursed her, called her hard. She closed the door without arguing. The sound of the blizzard swallowed him. Inside, rules began immediately. Fire only small. No one touches the barrels without her say. Wet clothes hung in order, not clumped. Voices low. Panic allowed, but privately and limited to short intervals like a ration. The boy cried silently for 10 minutes, then stopped. The doctor's wife worked his fingers, murmuring, keeping him anchored to the world. The miner stared at the stove as if trying to memorize it. That evening a second knock arrived. Softer this time. A voice Eliza recognized from summer jokes about dynamite and whiskey. "Just a few scraps," he pleaded. "We burned the chairs." She told him where the old lumber pile near the livery still might be buried, gave clear directions, made him repeat them. He asked again to come inside. She refused. There was a pause in which decision hung like frost. Then he went away, boots crunching with a finality that stung. Night pressed close. The wind changed pitch, deeper now, like a heavy animal settling down. Eliza lay awake, listening to the breathing in the cave, counting it, measuring the air. A sound scraped faintly from the pantry. She moved without noise, lantern low, and caught the miner's hand in the sack of beans. He froze. Shame flared across his face. She didn't yell. She walked him to the door, opened it an inch, let the cold peel across him until his breath turned into a desperate whistle. "This is what stealing becomes," she said quietly. "A shorter life for everyone." He nodded like a man accepting a sentence. When she closed the door again, he apologized without flourish and did not look at the sacks anymore. On the 4th night, the wind rose and then fell as if it had grown tired of pretending to be a simple storm. Somewhere far down the slope, a building collapsed with a dull, enormous sigh. Eliza wrote one more line before dousing the lamp. Ignorance freezes faster than water. Then she lay still, listening for the next knock, knowing it would come, and knowing every answer now carried a cost she had already decided to pay. At dawn the storm stopped so abruptly it felt like a trick. The silence had weight, suspicious and new. Eliza woke with her hand already on the ledger, listening. No wind, no hiss, no distant breaks, only a thick, watchful quiet. The boy stirred. The doctor's wife whispered a prayer under her breath, as if noise might wake the blizzard again. "Don't celebrate," Eliza said softly. "Weather doesn't like to be mocked." She eased to the entrance and pressed her palm to the boards. Cold. Too cold. The air was wrong packed. She lifted the bar and cracked the door an inch. A white wall leaned back at her. The avalanche arrived as a sound before it became a thing. A deep, rolling groan that rose like anger and snapped into a roar. The cave shuddered. Candles wavered. The miner swore. Eliza slammed the door, shoved the bar back, and spread her arms as if she could hold the mountain up with her own ribs. Snow thundered down the slope. It struck the face of the ridge and poured, thick and unstoppable, over the entrance. The world dimmed in a breath. The stove's flame rolled, seeking air. Panic touched the edges of the room like a wet dog shaking itself. "Sit," she ordered. "Breathe through your nose. Slow." They obeyed. Fear, when given a task, behaves. The air flattened. The cave exhaled and did not inhale. She grabbed the chisel and mallet and went to the back wall. There, above the stovepipe, she had mapped the weak seam months ago. Insurance policy. Quiet future mercy. She began to work, tapping, then striking harder. Stone dust fell into her hair. The doctor's wife tied a cloth around the boy's mouth. The miner braced the beam without being asked. Crack. Cold slid in through the new vent like a cautious animal. The stove brightened. All three of them breathed again as if surfacing from under a lake. Dark humor took hold in Eliza's throat. "If anyone intends to panic," she said, "do it quietly. Air costs extra." The boy laughed, a startled chirp that saved them all from screaming. They waited. Hours smudged together. The cave grew dimmer, not darker, filled with the strange blue light of buried snow. Once, the avalanche shifted above them, a lazy shrug that sent powder through the vent and dusted the stove. No one slept. Eliza counted heartbeats and fuel. She measured time by how often the boy asked if it was still day. When at last the weight above them released the smallest sigh, she knew the slide had settled. She ate a single bite of pork and saved the rest, then took the shovel and began to dig, not straight out but upward, carving a chimney to reach daylight. She worked in measured rhythm. Dig, pack, brace. Dig, pack, brace. The miner took turns with his good arm. The doctor's wife kept the boy moving so he wouldn't grow cold. The first crack of sunlight stabbed through the snow. Thin. Perfect. She widened it, then widened it more, and for the first time in days the sky returned, pale and exhausted. They climbed out. Below them, Bitter Fork looked less like a town than the memory of one. Rooflines were humps. The church bell poked out like a drowned thing refusing to sink. A trail of footprints wandered nowhere and ended in a drift. Smoke seeped from a single chimney, crooked and pleading. The sheriff appeared, climbing toward them with hands torn and eyes raw. He stopped when he saw the cave and the people alive inside the mountain. Words took a long time to find him. "We laughed," he said finally. "We were afraid, so we laughed." Eliza nodded. There was nothing to add. They worked through the day, pulling survivors out of snow-choked houses, wrapping fingers, boiling water. Not everyone was saved. The merchant who had promised to ride it out sat frozen in a chair he had burned down to the legs. The man who joked about dynamite had found the lumber pile and lived long enough to learn humility. When the sun set, Eliza returned to the cave and wrote, December 26, 1887. Those who prepared helped. Those who mocked learned. The mountain remains indifferent. In spring, when the trails opened and the air remembered gentleness, people began to visit not to sneer but to ask. She taught them to store, to plan, to listen. She did not tell them what to fear. She told them what to respect. And when the wind later rattled the ridge in some distant future winter, Bitter Fork did not laugh first. Prepared.